22 of Qore, presented by the PlayStation Network. I'm Veronica Belmont, and we are here in the UK to visit Volatile Games, where we sink our teeth into their latest noir action shooter, Dead to Rights Retribution. It's dark and dangerous in gritty Grant City, but don't be scared. You'll have your whittle puppy there to keep you company. Next, whether you started playing the franchise on an 8-bit console, or you think a chocobo is a chewy chocolate candy bar, you'll find something to love in our Final Fantasy XIII extravaganza. Check out our in-depth look at the story and gameplay, watch our exclusive interviews with the creators, and join Audrey for a look at the lunacy of launch day in Tokyo. We also get a look at Lost Planet 2. The latest from Capcom is bigger and significantly more beautiful than the original. Plus, you get all those giant boss battles you know and love. Next up, Audrey meets with a comic book legend.
Hey guys, Audrey here. I'm at Sony's Santa Monica studio to meet with the man behind the myth, Marv Wolfman, creator of the God of War graphic novels.
Don't miss Marv's walkthrough of the God of War comic in our exclusive narrated gallery. You won't find this anywhere else. Also, be sure to pop over to the DLC, where we have a dynamic Heavy Rain theme for Qore subscribers. All this and more in episode 22 of Qore, presented by the PlayStation Network. I'll see you on the inside. Final Fantasy XIII has been years in the making, and it truly is a wonder to behold. From the get-go, we could not help but notice how the stunning gameplay graphics rival the beauty of pre-rendered cutscenes. Gorgeous in-game battle scenes and unbelievably beautiful cinematics stand confidently together, side by side. But looks aren't everything, right? Trust us, the imaginative environments, vibrant characters, twisting plotline, deep combat, and mind-bending summons have brought to life a new fantasy epic that is clearly in a class of its own. Final Fantasy XIII's epic tale begins in the hollowed-out moon-like world of Cocoon, which orbits around a planet called Pulse. Within Cocoon, an all-powerful government called the Sanctum controls all aspects of its society under the guise of benevolent protectors, and offers its millions of inhabitants a luxurious and secure life. Centuries of bad blood between Cocoon and Pulse have helped to fuel Sanctum-fed paranoia to the point where any contact with anything or anyone from Pulse is strictly forbidden. Added to this complex mix are divine, godlike beings called the Fal'Cie. The Fal'Cie are working mostly behind the scenes, providing the citizens of Cocoon with everyday necessities such as energy, light, food production, and so on. The idyllic existence of Cocoon is shattered, literally overnight, when a rogue Fal'Cie from the planet Pulse is discovered in a vestige near Cocoon's beachside resort city of Bodum. The Sanctum acts quickly, rounding up all citizens and tourists to be purged from society. They are taken to an underground detention facility where they await deportation to Pulse, or so they think. Each of Final Fantasy XIII's main characters brings a unique, fresh perspective to the story. First is Lightning, the most stoic and serious pink-haired sword-swinging character we've ever encountered. She's a former Sanctum Guardian soldier who was living a normal life before her sister, Sarah, was doomed to be hauled off with the Pulse contaminants. Lightning defects from the military and goes undercover, single-mindedly focused on saving her sister. Inadvertently joining Lightning as she makes her initial strike is Saz.
You don't look ready to go quiet into that good night.
You want quiet? You better take the next train.
Although Lightning is at first reluctant to have him tag along, his 2 pistols and steadfast persistence convinced her otherwise. Then again, maybe it's his fluffy little chocobo chick that wins her over. Then there's Snow, the leader of a small group of resistance fighters who also happens to be Sarah's fiancé. Snow has promised to protect Sarah, and is determined to see that he does, no matter the cost.
I'll protect Sarah and Cocoon.
Try as he might, Snow has trouble gaining Lightning's confidence, and often clashes with her.
It's over! Open your eyes and face reality!
Hope is a young boy who was vacationing with his mother in Bodum when they were both swept up in the Purge. His mother had bravely offered to join Snow's resistance fighters, but was lost before she had the chance. Hope blames Snow for his mother's death. He keeps his seething anger and grief bottled up inside and follows him, secretly seeking the courage to exact his revenge. In stark contrast to Hope and his inner torment is Vanille. Her reasons for being where she is are not entirely clear at first, but she's more than happy to try and help the others feel better about their predicament.
Uh-oh. Then let's run away. Ciao!
Wait, hey.
Much later in the story, we meet Fang, a mysterious warrior woman who works with the Sanctum forces, despite having the mark of the dreaded l'Cie. She is a no-nonsense, strong-willed fighter who seems to have her own unique agenda. No sooner has Lightning and her crew set off to find Sarah when they discover the dreaded Pulse Fal'Cie, and in the process, they are branded and become enslaved l'Cie. Now Lightning's mission isn't just to save Sarah, but to save herself and her friends from what seems to be an unavoidably grim fate. Looking for a good fight? Your options are plenty and varied right from the beginning. Final Fantasy XIII's combat system is essentially a slick, fast-paced variation of the classic active time battle system, with some new unique features. At the crux of the battle system is the all-new Paradigm system. This enables you to assign specific abilities to each of the up to 3 characters involved in any given battle. These abilities determine how each character will behave in a fight, and combining them results in what's called a paradigm. Once you understand how paradigms work, you need to master the art and timing of the paradigm shift. You might begin a battle with an aggressive paradigm, but as you sustain damage from enemies, you'll need to move to a more defensive paradigm. You'll quickly discover that it's crucial to constantly assess the battle conditions and switch to the most effective paradigm for the situation when needed. Defeating enemies earns you Christogen points, which are shared equally among all characters. You can then enter the cleverly designed Crystarium, where you get to decide which aspects of each character's abilities you want to increase. And as the game progresses, more elaborate abilities are unlocked, the battles get a lot more exciting, and the challenge ramps up, especially when you face one of the many menacing bosses. Just as we expected, Final Fantasy XIII summons are a mixture of familiar and new, and as spectacular as ever. Each playable character has one awe-inspiring summon at his or her disposal, called an Eidolon. When summoned, Eidolons can assume 2 different modes. The first is a standalone mode that fights alongside the summoner automatically, as you continue to control your character's actions like you would in a normal battle. The second is a magnificent Gestalt mode. Eidolons can transform into an even more extraordinary creature that you control directly, in unison with your character. You'll have a number of points that you can allocate towards various ultra-powerful attacks. When you're down to your last point, hit triangle to unleash a crushing ultimate attack that sends the Eidolon away and returns you to normal battle. From the very first opening moments of Final Fantasy XIII, we were blown away. Without question, the visuals are the most breathtaking and creative we've ever seen on the PS3. Although the story may seem to progress in a linear fashion up front, you soon become intertwined with the backstories of the characters, and learn more about the fascinating worlds of Cocoon and Pulse. You will simply be amazed by where Lightning and her allies' epic journey ultimately takes them. Is Pulse truly the nightmare world the Sanctum says it is? Could this be the best Final Fantasy game to date? We dare say yes.
I don't really get caught up in how the previous Final Fantasy title was. There's a lot of freedom and creativity.
The scenario writer and the artist both got together and spent about a year putting together the details of the world. They put a lot of time and effort into creating these unique, vivid environments.
In a sense, we're all like l'Cie. We've been chosen to work on a Final Fantasy title, and we're really happy to fulfill our mission. We really want to bring our best ideas to the table. A lot of us staff members grew up playing the Final Fantasy series, and it's really an honor to be working on these titles. So a lot of the passion that goes into developing these Final Fantasy games is probably what helps create a high-quality game every time.
really wanted to pursue a futuristic vision for the world, and Cocoon is sort of a representative of the futuristic aspect of Final Fantasy XIII.
It's essentially a planet that has been carved out and multiple cities have been placed within it, and since it is a future world, it is something that doesn't exist yet, so there was nothing that we were directly inspired by.
On the other end of the spectrum, there's Pulse, which is a more organic world. It's a little bit more tribal, and there are large dinosaur-like monsters roaming in the world.
We had the art team go to the Grand Canyon and take inspiration from that location and the nature there, and we also tried to create a world in which there was a type of nature that human eyes have never really seen, that doesn't really exist in our world.
The goals set by the art team in pursuing the highest quality possible are there from the very get-go, and especially for Final Fantasy XIII. Creating really detailed, beautiful characters and realistic characters was always on the art team's minds.
The characters of Final Fantasy XIII are not really your typical heroes. They are all ordinary citizens of the world, and they just get caught up in an incident and start on their adventure that way.
I think that a lot of people might think with technology, it's possible to create a certain set motion for CG animation, and then the rest is all automatic. When you press a button and the characters move on their own, or the facial expressions happen on their own. But in reality, there's a lot of manual labor and a lot of time that's spent that only people can go in and do the detailed work. For example, there's the voice and the lip syncing. There's a program that enables the mouths of the characters to move automatically, but to really breathe a life into the characters, to make them seem more human, the staff have to go in and adjust the mouth's movements to the very last detail and put a lot of time and effort into it.
There has been a lot of comments about how linear the earlier portion of the game is, but it's because it's a story-driven section of the game, and we really wanted the player to have an experience that's something more cinematic and movie-like. So once you get toward the latter half of the gameplay mechanisms come into full force, so we really like for players to advance that far in the game and enjoy the battle system a little more.
The basic concept behind the battle system for Final Fantasy XIII was to have something speedy and also very tactical at the same time, and obviously the graphics have evolved to the point where realistic actions can take place one after another, so there's a lot going on at the same time. We really wanted to depart from micromanaging each character in battle and go into a more strategic battle system where you can look at the overall flow of the battle system and control the tide of battle that way. I think a lot of people that don't know a lot about Final Fantasy look at it and dismiss it as just a JRPG, which is a term that has been thrown around a lot lately. But the Final Fantasy teams never have a certain template that they work with. They never set out to create a certain type of RPG, and they're always looking to create something new and different. So I'd like to tell those people that don't know much about the series, if they want to experience something new and different, perhaps they want to try Final Fantasy XIII.
Final Fantasy XIII is finally stateside this month, but when the epic RPG dropped in Japan last December, we juiced up with some elixirs and hit the streets of Tokyo to witness the fan frenzy. I'm in the famous downtown Shibuya, where these fans of Final Fantasy XIII have been lined up for hours, and it's barely the crack of dawn. They're about to head in and grab their game. So what were all the fanboys and girls looking forward to the most? We flagged them down to ask.
Final Fantasy XII wasn't as good as I expected. I have a lot of expectations for 13, including the scenario and the story. I hope it's going to make me cry.
The stories are usually well constructed, and the visuals look really good.
I've been waiting for it so long. I just want to get my hands on it as quickly as possible.
And when the doors opened, it was pure Final Fantasy fandemonium. Sean, who just got his copy of Final Fantasy XIII. How do you feel right now that you have it right here in this guy? Take it out. Let's see what it looks like.
See.
Yeah. Nice.
There you go. You get to see the back.
You're from the Philadelphia area,
yeah,
you said.
Sure.
How smug do you feel right now that you have the game before anybody else back home? I mean, you can like pat yourself. You can high five me.
Extremely smug.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and now where are you headed to?
I'm going to
play Final Fantasy until your eyes bleed.
I'm actually going to sleep the entire day and then probably play the entire night.
Well, we can only hope he loaded up on those exclusive Final Fantasy elixirs. I mean, how else are you gonna fuel up for a saga fighting the Fall Sea?
We had our first enticing peek at Lost Planet 2 last year at E3 2009, and with its release just around the corner, we're happy to report that it's looking bigger and better than ever. From teeth-rattling explosions to unimaginably massive monsters, this long-awaited sequel doesn't do anything small. So grab your gear and get ready. You're about to see what's got a whole planet ready to throw down. When we last visited Eden 3, it was a snow-covered, frozen wasteland. Simply being on the icy planet would slowly eat away at your life, forcing you to constantly seek thermal energy to stay alive. Sounds like a party, right? Too bad the weather wasn't the only thing to worry about. Vicious, bug-like creatures of all shapes and sizes, called the Acrid, were all too happy to make your icebox life a living hell. 10 years have passed and the planet has been slowly thawing, revealing all sorts of diverse terrain just begging to be tapped for resources. Several manned outposts now pepper the landscape, each one wary of the next. The Acrid are also back in full force, taking on everyone in an attempt to reclaim their formerly frozen world. You can imagine where all this is headed. Hundreds of greedy, trigger-happy squatters descending on unclaimed wilderness, territorial Acrid enraged by their shrinking habitat. Aw yeah. There's gonna be one hell of a fight. Lost Planet 2 isn't just about one faction in this worldwide conflict. You'll take control of a soldier in one of 6 different squads throughout the game, each one with its own objectives, hazards, and enemies. You can customize your character from the get-go, and as the game progresses, you'll earn credits that unlock new costume pieces, stronger weapons and abilities, and even hilarious taunt animations designed to pester your opponents. Now, you can choose to take on the world alone, but we found that playing co-op was the best way to go. Enlist some AI on your team, or tear it up with up to 3 friends. That means 4 handmade troops blasting through the dense jungle, makeshift cities, and who knows what else. All leaning on each other for support and protection from the big bad bugs. The Acrid were your biggest concern in the original game, and they certainly still are in Part 2, with extra emphasis on big. They vary wildly in size and intensity, so you're just as likely to run into a small, dog-sized creature as you are a towering behemoth that'd give Godzilla a run for his money. Some are so mind-blowingly huge that even a 4-player co-op can expect to spend upwards of 10 minutes in battle, and not even come close to bringing it down. These huge boss battles are undeniably intense, grueling, and insanely fun. If you're going to take on a whole planet's worth of adversaries, you'd better be equipped for the job. Luckily, the generous arsenal from the first Lost Planet returns, along with a few new surprises designed with multiplayer co-op in mind. You'll start out with the basics: machine guns, grenades, battle armor, and so on. These will definitely come in handy fast, as will your trusty ripcord. It's great for zipping around maps, and can quickly help you gain the upper hand in battle. Before long, you'll find more weapons like the massive Gatling guns, sticky grenades, and plasma charges that'll definitely help you and your team get the job done. But it's the many different vital suits, a Lost Planet specialty, that we enjoyed the most. There are several different VSs to choose from, and each offers a unique and equally enormous amount of firepower. There are even massive co-op suits built for taking on some of the biggest and baddest Acrid on the planet. So how do you take down creatures that are so huge? Fortunately, the Acrid evolved some pretty obvious weak points, namely all those glowing energy bulbs you see all over their bodies. Throw everything you've got at those long enough and they'll pop, spewing thermal energy all over the place. This orange goo, called Tang, is the lifeblood of the Acrid, and it's also critical to keeping specific weapons and the vital suits powered. Use it to power your own gear, or give both you and your teammates an extra boost. You can even use the special Tang gun to fire the energy to needy members of your co-op, or to activate devices in the battlefield. Also, if you manage to take out one of the massive Acrid, they leave behind a huge glowing puddle of power goodness. Tang. In Lost Planet 2, bigger is definitely better. In our playthrough, we found the main campaign to be an explosive, jaw-dropping combination of intense firefights and unforgettable bosses. Add in extensive co-op and multiplayer versus modes, a huge arsenal of weapons and vital suits, and you have yourself one hell of a beast-blasting extravaganza.
The pen is mightier than the Blades of Chaos, and no one knows that better than Marv Wolfman, creator of the God of War graphic novels. A living legend in the comics world, Marv Wolfman's worked on everything from Vampirella to Superman. Kratos is making his comeback, and we're diving even deeper into our anti-hero's history. What do you think is so compelling about the God of War games that it makes a good comic book?
Well, first you have the story of Kratos that's compelling in himself, because when you saw him in the first game, he's committing suicide and the gods are stopping him, and you want to find out why. You want to find out what this character is about. You want to find out why this muscular guy is ending his own life. It's a great story. What happened to his family, what he did, what the gods have manipulated humans into doing, what he has to do in order to sort of make up for what he's done. And that's the story that interested me, and it's the reason why I got so into the game.
Now, clearly you are a fan of the game.
I am absolutely a fan of the game. In fact, when I found out that Wildstorm was doing the graphic novel or was thinking of doing the graphic novel, I immediately started bombarding them with, I want to do this. What I wanted to do was take that passion that I really feel for the game and then start doing a story about his past, the things that fleshed out his life, his history, what happened in his life that he is so passionate about his family, beyond what you would expect, because here's somebody who was willing to go against the gods to solve his problem, and then you'll start to understand why this character is the way he becomes. Only Kratos can go through what we've done in the graphic novel, and it plays upon only his history and his background and his reasonings. It's not an interchangeable story that you could throw in any hero from any game. This is 100% a Kratos story.
How do you kind of formulate this background story to him? I mean, there's so much to it, and I'm sure a lot of players had a lot of the same questions as you did writing this or before writing this.
First thing I did was actually read Greek history about what it was like to be a soldier and what you had to go through, and the fact that you do start as a kid and then all the different trials, then you become somebody in charge. You keep moving up. So as I started to read all the stories, my master story came around, and I realized that if we were going to show Kratos in both the present and in the past should follow through what was actually done in Sparta. But the hardest part of any of these is making sure that the people who read the books feel that this is a real God of War story, as opposed to just some writer coming in who looked at the game and went, oh, I could write that, you know. No, it had to be someone who actually understood the game. And then working with Sony, I was getting the feedback on the dialogue to make sure it was absolutely the same as in the game. So it's the best of all worlds, because anyone reading it should get a great sense of it being a real Kratos story that's going to unveil a lot of information that you didn't know. So I want you to get emotionally invested in this story, no matter whether you're a God of War fan or coming into it for the first time.
No doubt the 6 issues of God of War will keep readers on the edge of their seats, and you can get an early preview with Marv's commentary in our exclusive God of War gallery and see how it all began.
You begin in the present, which is between God of War 1 and God of War 2, and Kratos is entering this cavern where these creatures suddenly attack. He has to defeat them all, then climb this mountain where there's these cocoons filled with baby versions of the creatures, and he's about to kill one when he flashes back to him being 8 years old on top of a mountain where all the deformed children at the time, and this is true, had to be thrown to their deaths. That's Mount Tegatos in Sparta. If you were born deformed, weak, ill, or some fashion, you were sacrificed. And here's 8-year-old Kratos holding this deformed baby, and he's being ordered by his people to sacrifice them. And this all connects with where we're going with the story. And so the creature that you see in the very beginning brings him back to him being 8 years old, and then you're going to follow Kratos as he enters the army, as he gets older, as he starts becoming more powerful, and you also understand why he has this natural rebellion, because he was forced to do something that he may not have wanted to do. And yet on the other side, he's a character who is fiercely loyal to Sparta.
Bullets, brutality, and enough blood spatter to make Michael Myers jealous. Dead to Rights Retribution is an action-packed, unrelenting saga where getting all aggro is encouraged. Meet Jack Slate, our hardened vice cop antihero, and his trusty canine sidekick, Shadow. Shadow's the epitome of man's best friend, and you'll even get to play as him sometimes. But don't let those puppy dog eyes fool you. This ferocious wolf Malamute crossbreed tears his owner's attackers to shreds at Jack's request. Aw, good dog. Our main man is a hyper-dedicated cop intent on ridding the gritty streets of Brant City from the riffraff that's taken over, and he'll clean it up all right, even if it means stepping outside the law to do it. So what was developer Volatile Games' main inspiration for such a ruthless slaughterfest? 2 words: film noir. This style and theme permeates every aspect of Dead to Rights Retribution. Our interrogations of Volatile's team in Guildford, England revealed 6 degrees of noir that take DTR from dark to darker.
Noir is a very complex a style of telling stories. That is exactly what we wanted to use in this game as well, to put in that complexity, that depth, that attention to details in every single area, let it be art, storytelling, and most importantly, game design.
Grant City is a dark, grim place. Once a bustling metropolis, its shiny city brightness is considerably tarnished from the sky to the streets. Speaking of which, they're always wet, the building's always dirty, and you can't turn a corner in GC without facing a not-so-friendly neighborhood thug. So when it comes to depicting a noir world rife with fear and danger, the visuals are dead on.
With regard to the visuals of Dead to Rights, the main influence from film noir is their use of high contrast atmospheric lighting.
The locations are gritty, they're industrial, they're not necessarily nice places to live. They fall into disrepair, and we show that throughout the environment. And with the characters, again, they're not really nice people. They've had a really hard life, and we show that with our main character, Jack.
On paper, Jack is kind of a good guy. He fights the baddies to protect the innocent. But when push comes to shove, or when the GCPD bureaucracy is just too darn slow to act, our anti-hero goes from good cop to bad good cop.
Jack Slate is very much a noir hero in the sense that he's a good guy, but he's not particularly good. He's morally quite questionable. He's a very violent and impulsive man. He does a lot of damage and he hurts a lot of people that he doesn't have to. And I think it's interesting to play this good guy, this hero that isn't sort of very good.
Jack isn't the only bad hero you play. As Shadow, you'll get on all fours and sink your canine teeth into the carnage. As Jack's accomplice, Shadow fits right into all of the bloody action. He's sneaky, lethal, fiercely loyal to Jack, and not afraid to get up close and personally devastating with his victims. His stealth vision allows him to see people through walls and detect their threat levels, bark to lure enemies closer to you, then maul away like only he can. More than just a typical sidekick, Shadow is Jack's life insurance. Jack simply couldn't survive without him.
I'm all right, Shadow.
For me, film noir music is all about the paranoia, about the sense of being on your own, about fighting against the world. And that's something I wanted to convey through the music in Dead to Rights. There are themes for Jack, there's themes for Frank, there's themes for the GAC. Within Jack's theme, I wanted to have something that was quite sorrowful, but at the same time, it doesn't really kind of resolve anywhere.
People are looking for you.
Yeah, all the wrong people.
Soundtrack aside, it's the action that takes center stage. Think of DTR as noir for a new generation, a theme that just happens to include unrelenting slaughter. The game's combination of a cerebral crime story with over-the-top chaotic gunplay works rather well. Excessive? Maybe. Satisfying? Totally. And don't fret, you'll have a huge list of weapons, moves, bone-crushing takedowns, and even doggy commands at your disposal. Yep, these two definitely love the smell of splat in the morning, and after a few minutes of playing anti-heroes with them, we think you will too.